Hello and welcome back to the Google Workspace Update podcast from Strawberry 7. My name is Adam.
And my name is Adam.
We're here every week to bring you the latest updates happening around Google Workspace. This podcast is available in audio format from your regular podcast provider and also in video format on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/strawberry7.
Coming up on the show today,
we have 5 updates for you today. We've got updates to Google Drive, connecting sheets, calendar, chat, and one more for Drive. So, let's get to it.
On with the show. First up this week, we've got a Google Drive update. So, enhancing the Google Drive mobile experience on Android tablets. Google is optimizing the Google Drive app for tablet displays through several modernizations, get that word right, including shifting the navigation bar to the side, optimizing visual components to take advantage of the larger screen, and also making it easier to see file details for a selected file.
Oh, okay, so this is, I know this isn't exclusively talking about it in this update, but this is very similar to some of the recent updates we've seen where they've been optimizing for the dual screen Android devices, isn't it, Adam? So they're actually optimizing this, and again, for any of our listeners who are maybe new to us or who haven't heard before, we always put a link to a document in this that we read from in the description of the podcast or in the description of the video, and that will give you not only the words that we've said in the podcast, but also there's some very nice pictures in here as well of exactly what these updates look like that Adam's discussing here. Adam very kindly puts these pictures in for everybody. So there's some very nice pictures in here, isn't there, Adam, of showing exactly what this looked like before and what it's looked like after. I am very suspicious, Adam, right? Because
since I mentioned it, it has been happening more and more frequently. I mentioned that Google needs to add in the before and after. Lo and behold, we're starting to see that more and more frequently. So there's only one explanation, that Google is just there paying attention to us.
Yeah,
they're listening.
I can't think of another explanation either. I mean, that is obviously what it is that Google's been listening. I can't remember how many episodes ago it was that you suggested that they sort of put these before and after pictures in. Then it's a very strange coincidence that happened in the next episode, wasn't it? That I put that in. But regardless, it is very useful to see these before and after sort of pictures here, and it looks much nicer, much more modern, much nicer, much cleaner interface now, doesn't it?
Yes, so this reminded me a little bit of, in our last few episodes we mentioned that there was an update to Google Drive where they've just kind of slightly adjusted the look and feel of Google Drive, and so this update kind of takes a step in that direction for Android. Something I did think about, actually, because the before picture that we can see at the moment, that is very much how it also looks in iOS devices, but because this update is only for Android devices, I wondered if the reason they've not done that is potentially because if you change the view from horizontal to landscape, on iPhones there's the bit at the top which could potentially interfere with where you would see like the home or your shares, your shared drives or your starred or your files. The alignment may interfere a little bit. So I was wondering if maybe that's why they've released this for Android at the moment, but not for iOS just yet.
That's a very good point, Adam. Yeah, absolutely. It could that could be the reason, because there are some different functions in terms of how iOS and Android obviously work differently, and there are some of those static areas on iOS that you don't get on Android. So yeah, you're quite right. Maybe it is going to be a bit interfering on iOS, and maybe that is why they've just done it for Android. Thank you, Adam. When are we expecting to see this update?
Okay, so this is rolling out to rapid release domains right now, and launch to scheduled release domains is planned for April the 3rd, which is next week. Is that the day this comes out? Wednesday? The Monday, the day this comes out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it'll be the day this podcast is released. Yeah, so it'll be available for all scheduled release domains. That's wonderful. It's also when I'm back from Germany as well, so I'll be back into the land of the UK. Lovely, Adam. Thank you. What have we got next?
Right. Next up, Connected Sheets for Looker is now available for all Looker hosted instances. So in 2020, Google introduced Connected Sheets on Google Sheets to help you analyze, visualize, and share billions of rows of data from your spreadsheets. Since then, Google has made numerous improvements to the feature, including the recent announcement that you can now explore Google Cloud hosted Looker instances using Google Sheets, which we covered on this podcast. Now, Google has expanded upon this by making Connected Sheets available for Looker instances hosted on non-Google cloud providers like AWS and Azure.
Well, this is going to be really, really useful for people who are listening who do have that situation where it isn't on Google Cloud, but they've got it on AWS or Azure. They're going to be able to use this Looker sort of system. For anybody listening who's not familiar with this, as Adam said there, we did actually cover this a few episodes back, where we were talking quite in depth, weren't we, about Looker and our sort of understanding of it. But in a very, very sort of basic sense, Looker is a system that allows you to pull in data, like big data, effectively from lots of different sources and put it into one view to allow you to see that data across those different platforms in a very, very easy way. And then Connected Sheets then allows you to kind of take that data out, put it into effectively a Google Sheet, but you're dealing with it in billions of rows, as Adam said there. That's kind of the main difference that we could determine, couldn't we, Adam, between Connected Sheets and just a regular Google Sheets, was Connected Sheets is geared up for this huge data manipulation, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So the Connected Sheets, that's where all the data will actually be, but you could use Looker to analyse all of that data to then turn it into something tangible.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Connected Sheets allows you to further kind of manipulate that data, put it into the sheet. Like Looker might be that it will allow you to see all of that data, but then in Connected Sheets you could do things like apply a filter, for example, and just filter out the data that you wanted to see. So very, very powerful tool, very effective, and brilliant that they're now expanding that to AWS and Azure as well. That's going to be really helpful for anybody in that situation, I think. How do people get started with this, Adam?
Okay, so for the admins, in order for users to take advantage of this feature, they need to make sure that Connected Sheets for Looker is enabled in Looker's admin menu. As Adam mentioned, we always add a link in our podcasts for the documents that we use. I've added loads of really helpful links into that document, and one of them is for Looker's admin menu. You could also visit the Help Center, Google's Help Center, to learn more about using Connected Sheets in your organization. For the end users, if it's been enabled by your admin, then in your Google Sheets, you can navigate to Data Connectors, connect to Looker, then you'd want to enter the URL of a Looker instance. Then you'll need to authorize Sheets to access your Looker data. After you connect to and explore, you can see the available data and continue your analysis in Google Sheets. And again, as I just said, you can also visit the Google's Help Center to learn more about using Connected Sheets for Looker.
Okay, that's fantastic, Adam. Thank you for that explanation there. And it's like we said last time about this Connected Sheets. It was really nice to see how it's very straightforward, really, to connect to your Looker instance. Like you say, you just open Google Sheets, data connector, and then you just put in the URL of your Looker there and authorize it. So really nice to see that. What's the sort of rollout phase here, and who is this? I think probably easier to say not available for, right?
Yeah, so this feature is available right now for all the users, which is great. This is not available to legacy G Suite Basic and Business customers, but it should be available to everybody else, which is great.
Lovely. And I can see it's even available to people with a personal account. So again, we talked about that before, didn't we? How we thought it was a little bit interesting that they'd chosen to do that.
Yeah, I wonder if that was intentional or if it was just easier to leave them bundled in with everyone else that they made it available to.
Yeah, maybe just easier to leave it bundled in, eh? Lovely, thank you, Adam. What have we got next?
Okay, next up we have a Google Calendar update. So launching in beta, you can manage working locations with the Calendar API. So, available now in beta through Google's Developer Preview program, you can read working location data using the Calendar API and get notified when those working locations change. Previously, Google said this functionality would be available through a separate API. However, in order to provide a more streamlined experience, this functionality will be instead available in the Calendar API. Using the API to read a calendar user's working location value can help you analyze the flow and volume of people through physical campuses, helping you adapt on-site resources to the needs of your employees, or to share whereabouts across other internal or third-party services, making it easier to enable tasks such as hot desking or schedule in-office or remote working days. Google anticipates write support for their API to become available in Q3 2023, so that's probably in a couple of months' time, and Google will share an update for that at the time.
Okay, very interesting. I mean, I imagine the possible applications of this are probably a bit too wide for us to go into, but I can immediately see here how this would be very useful in some premises management sort of software, where it would allow through an API plugin for you to be able to see, I don't know, in a simple sense, a big screen at the entrance that says, hey, our office is at 80% capacity today, or something like that, by using working locations in Google Calendar. Now, obviously, it does depend on there being a very tight control on people updating their working location in Google Calendar. That's obviously for an internal procedure sort of arrangement. But it's just brilliant that Google have allowed that API plugin to that data that's already existing in Google Calendar. I can imagine that would be very useful for premises management and resource management.
Yes, I was thinking this is probably good for some sites if there's lots of booking of rooms through Google Calendar, potentially somewhere like a large university where it's like semi-open to the public, where lots of people come in and go. They book resources or rooms, or a situation like that.
Yeah, I agree. And the very interesting thing I find here as well is when it says Google anticipates write support for the API to be available in Q3. So Q3, we're looking at sort of autumn time, isn't it? But the write support is an interesting aspect, because from my understanding of that means that you would effectively, let's say you had a card reader, kind of like we've got at the schools, actually, some of our schools, where you've got a card reader that opens the door, but it also signs you in on site. You could scan that, sign you in on site. The API in the background would then ping across to your Google Calendar and update your working location to being on site because you've scanned into the building. That would be my interpretation of what they're saying there with the API write support.
Oh, that'd be interesting, and a great feature if that is the way that it works. When I first read this, I wondered if that was almost like tracking people's actual location to see where they're actually working that day, whether they've added it into their calendar or not. But I don't think it is that. Google's not quite that big brother just yet, anyway. But if it was like, as you suggested, then that kind of integration or that style of using this could be really great.
Yeah, I think it's where these things really are most useful, because, like I say, if you're getting all of your users to update their locations on Google Calendar and then it feeds through to some kind of premises management software, that's great, but it's so reliant on everybody following that procedure absolutely to the letter, and that doesn't always happen, and it's very nice to see that there's possibly going to be a write back feature there, because then you're supporting it from both sides. You're capturing people who are updating it on Google Calendar, but then you're also capturing it in your premises management software that you've already got, of, say, signing people in, or even, like you've alluded to, Adam, maybe your location has some geofencing technology built in so that everybody who works at your location installs your company app, and then there's a geolocation system built in that it knows when your device is coming into the building, and it updates you, or something like that. So I think that's when it's very beneficial. We've really seen that as an advantage in our schools, haven't we, when we've installed these systems, and we're starting to do this more and more, thanks to our colleague Gary taking a lot of lead on how this works and working with one of our partners to get this set up really well, which is when a lot of now on the visitor system that we've got at our schools, when users approach or come into the building and they swipe the card, as I said before, it opens the door for them, but it also signs them in on the visitor system. And again, when they're leaving, it's kind of, there's multiple ways that they can sign out. They can tap their card to the reader, they can scan the code, they can tap it on the exit. It doesn't matter, it kind of captures them however they're doing it, because we acknowledge that everybody isn't always thinking about everything. We've got a lot to think about, right? And you just want an easy flow for people to come in and out of the building. You don't want them to have to scan in to open the door and then scan another system to sign in and do something else.
They let themselves out the door, but they slam the door behind them because the person behind them needs to open the door themselves to sign themselves out. Yeah, no.
Yeah. It's just too complicated for people to do. So you try and put as many things in there where you're capturing it along the way. And again, like we've integrated in our schools, having one card that opens the door, signs them in, retrieves their job from the photocopier, for example. You know, it's all about making it easy for the end user, isn't it? So great. Sorry, went off on a slight tangent there about building management, but it's all sort of relevant, I suppose. How do people get started with this then, Adam?
Okay, so developers can apply to the Google Workspace Developer Preview Program to use this feature. Admins can visit the Google's Help Center to learn more about configuring the working location feature for your organization. While all developers will be able to use the API, the working location feature is only available to eligible Google Workspace editions. And so it is not going to be available to Google Workspace Essentials, Business Starter, Enterprise Essentials, Frontline, or G Suite Basic Business customers, but it should be available to everybody else.
Very nice. And it's interesting that they've said that it's not available to Business Starter, but obviously it is available to like Business Standard and up, which is actually quite a introductory tier. So it's quite interesting that they've put it at a fairly relatively low level of their workspace editions there, which is very nice. And very nice that they've included it for education, sort of pretty much right across the board as well. So that's really good. Thank you, Adam. What have we got next?
Okay, next up, admins can now install Google Chat apps for use in direct messages. So we kind of touched on this a little bit. It was a handful of episodes ago now where users were able to install their own apps, where it looks like now admins will have the ability to do that for their users. So Google Chat apps integrate with productivity tools, enable you to collaborate with others, and can also help automate your work. Previously, to start using an app in chat, users had to individually install apps, as I mentioned. Starting this week, admins can install chat apps for direct messages on behalf of users within their domain from the Workspace Marketplace. Users will automatically see when an app has been enabled, eliminating the need to manually install the apps themselves. Admins can deploy chat apps as they see fit, which is either to the entire domain, OU, or group of users using the Workspace Marketplace apps management controls. This feature enables admins to provide their users with instant access to chat integrations they need for their workflow within an organization. So I think, which as we kind of mentioned at the time when the update about installing chat apps first came about, if you're using something like Zendesk, you're going to want your entire team to be using that. So through this update that we've got today, admins can make sure that their entire team, or everybody that needs to be using that chat app, are using it and it is available. So you don't need to remind everyone, make sure they install this app or anything like that. The admins have the ability to push it out.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. And it's also breaking down those barriers of a new starter as well. You know, having enrolled a few new starters myself into Strawberry 7, you are very conscious of the fact that somebody's coming into a role and you're immediately having to get them to do about 900 tasks. You have to get identification off of them, you have to do DBS enhanced checks, you have to sign contracts, they've got to know their way around the school and meet all these people and everything like that. And these types of things are just one less thing that they're having to do, one less thing that's putting the onus on the user. So it's very, very nice from not just an administrator's point of view, but from a business owner or business operator's point of view, to be able to automate these deployments and automate these enrolments. Very nice to see there. And the picture, or rather the kind of GIF that you've included here on the description document of how you do this, is very useful to show and remind people that you can deploy these chat apps. I think you've probably actually mentioned it in the description there, but the video shows this in a very nice way of you can deploy these to certain groups or certain OUs within Google Workspace. So the example that I've given here is really nice, where they've got clearly like an engineering based integration, but they've deployed it just to the engineering team rather than to the entire domain and everybody in it. So again, really nice control there to make sure that the right people are seeing the right integrations.
Absolutely, but it is worth remembering with this one, it does look like you push this out through the Workspace marketplace, not through the Google Admin Console, which you would push other stuff out.
Yeah, it's quite. It can be a little bit confusing, can't it? Because Google seem to have about sort of 3 different places that you can push out different apps. I've gotten confused myself sometimes when I'm trying to deploy apps to Chromebooks, for example, and you need to do it under sort of devices and then marketplace rather than marketplace, which is for Chrome apps rather than Chromebook apps. And so yeah, like Adam says, you've got to make sure you go into the right place there. But we're just about to go on to the getting started, aren't we? And there's some very useful links in there that Adam's provided on exactly where to go and how to do this. So how do people get started with this if they're admins?
Okay, so admins, if needed, they can visit Google's Help Center to learn more about installing marketplace apps in your domain and allowing users to install chat apps. When a chat app is installed for an end user, they will be automatically notified. End users cannot uninstall the apps installed by the admins, but they can turn off notifications. You can also, there's a list available for chat apps available from Google, and consider performing an admin install from the marketplace, which you need to do using your administrator account. To get started for the end users will continue to be able to install chat apps from chat. Installation from the Workspace Marketplace isn't available for end users at this time. When a chat app is installed by your admin, you will be automatically notified.
Okay, yeah, so it's a very straightforward sort of process from both ends there. And I think it's worth mentioning as well, just for anybody who didn't listen to our previous episode where we were talking about this feature coming out of these apps actually being enabled for chat, you can as an administrator kind of turn this off completely if you want. If you don't want people to be able to put apps onto Google Chat, then you can turn that off completely. We were talking about that in an education environment, weren't we? And we were saying Google Chat is probably off in your education environment anyway, but if it is on and you are using it, especially with students, then you can control the deployment of whether you want end users to be able to install these apps or not.
Yes, yeah, this is probably more for a slightly more mature workspace organisation.
You'd hope so. Great. What's the rollout pace here, and who is this? I think probably not available for is a shorter list, isn't it?
Okay, so rapid release and scheduled release is going to be an extended rollout, so that means it may take more than 15 days. It started on March the 29th, and this is not going to be available to non-profits, and is also not going to be available to users with a personal Google account, but it should be available to everybody else.
Okay, so that's a very good sort of rollout of that feature then to most users there. Again, it's like we said before, and we said a few times with these Google Chat updates, makes sense that it's not available to personal Google accounts because I don't think anyone's really using it in a personal environment unless they want to chat with themselves. So yeah, unless Gollum's using it or something, then it's probably not going to be that useful. Lovely, thank you, Adam. I think we've got one more update, haven't we?
Yes, so last up this week from us is Google Drive. So you can now find files quicker with search chips in Google Drive. So we've mentioned there's been quite a few chips that have been included in quite a few updates that we've seen across Google Workspace, which we like to see. So last month, Google pre-announced numerous features that offer new experiences in Smart Canvas, including enhancing Google Drive to help you complete your most frequent tasks more quickly. Today, they're introducing search chips in Drive that enable you to filter by criteria like file type, owner, last modified date. Filtering by these criteria helps you narrow down and find relevant files faster in any view throughout Google Drive.
Yeah, very nice. I mean, we talked about this feature before, and when I actually saw this, I thought, hang on a minute, I'm having deja vu here. Hasn't this already come out? But as they said, they pre-announced the features coming out, and now they're sort of going to be available.
Now it's actually announced.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I have seen this on our, because we've moved to rapid release so that we can kind of test these features for you guys listening before we talk about them as much as possible. And I've seen these chips around, and they're very, very, it is really useful. Again, there's a nice little sort of video graphic in the description document here showing you how to access these, and I just love the fact that you can go into an area and you can just go on the drop down and say, hey, show me all the PDFs in this folder, for example, show me all the things that I own, or something like that. So it's very useful to be able to see that. Or of course the last modified, that's probably the most useful actually, I think, for most people.
Yeah, so I thought this feature was just already available, but what I think this is actually all about, where previously if you were searching for a document, or if you were just searching Google Drive, under the search results you would see a chip like this, which you could then filter by your PDFs or documents, or add whichever filter you wanted to, whereas now it looks like just when you're in the root of your My Drive or anywhere within Google Drive, you don't need to actually search. You can just immediately say, show me the PDFs, or show me this, or show me that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Adam. Yeah, definitely. It's very easy to access, and it's just a little bit, I think when we talked about it last time, we said it's just a little bit less intimidating than going into the full search, because for anybody who's not familiar, if you go to Google Drive, it will say at the very top, search in Drive, and there's like a little sort of bit with some lines on the right hand side. Kind of almost looks like an abacus, doesn't it? I think I said last time. And you click on that, and then it will give you the full list of search options that you can filter by. But they're quite intimidating. There's quite a lot there, and it can be quite complicated to find your way around. So these smart chips are just a very quick way of getting to those. I think Google have got it quite right here with those key things that you'd want to look at: file type, people, and the last modified. I think that's pretty useful. Thank you, Adam. How do people get started with this?
Okay, so there's no admin control for this feature, so no action is required. But for the rollout, so rapid release domains, again, there's an extended rollout, so it may take longer than 15 days, but that started on March the 30th. Scheduled release, there's going to be a gradual rollout again, but this is starting in Q2 2023, and Google will provide an update once that date approaches, so stay tuned for whenever that may be.
No problem, yeah. Interesting that they're doing quite a slow rollout on this, but yeah, as Adam says, stay tuned to our podcast, and we'll report on that as soon as Google release that. And I think this is going to be available pretty much across the board, isn't it?
Yes, so this is available to all Google Workspace customers, as well as legacy G Suite Basic and Business customers, and it is also available to users with a personal Google account. So if you have access to Google Drive, which if you have access to Google, you have access to Google Drive, then this is available to everyone.
That's wonderful. That's brilliant. Thank you, Adam. Nice to see that across the board. Well, that is it, everybody. That's everything you need to know about the latest updates happening around Google Workspace. Remember that this update podcast is available from your regular podcast provider and also in video format on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/strawberry7. Adam and I have been keeping an eye on the numbers. We can see the lovely listener numbers going up and up, which is absolutely fantastic. And we really, really do appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast, everybody who watches on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for joining us this week.
We'll be back again next week with more updates.
Goodbye.
Bye.